What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the TI Junkies podcast. This is Henry.
And this is Rand.
And before we start today's episode, we just wanted to remind everybody that general signups for our tournament, Stooge for the Throne 2, are now open. There are currently 7 spots left, including a few in my game, so please get on that and join my game if you're interested in hosing me, seeing me get hosed, seeing me be a better player, Stooge, all that good stuff.
And in case the games are already filled up by the time you get there, don't fret, no problem. You can also sign up as a backup player for any amount of games, so do that. And be sure to tune into Game 1 featuring Drago Thaxton this weekend, streamed on our YouTube and Twitch.
And now, let's get into the episode.
We just did the old-fashioned map build, which is kind of very tactile, really cool. Used to doing it on Milty, so that was fun.
In the map build, I prioritized screwing over Winu by placing a supernova on the path of Mecatol. Which got me screwed as somebody placed an empty in front of Mecatol for me, so I'm not going to be able to get my PDS2 set up next to Mecatol like I wanted.
So today we're talking about building the map, rules as written, or raw. And before we get into what we love about this style of map building, let's talk about what it actually is and what the mechanics are and what building the map rules as written means.
So when you build the map raw, every player will be dealt a hand of tiles. This will be a combination of planet tiles as well as anomalies, empty spaces.
In a 6-player game, each player receives 3 blue-backed tiles, which are tiles that contain planets, and 2 red-backed tiles, which are either empties or anomalies.
Then the players take turns placing the tiles from their hand onto the game board, starting with whoever is speaker. First, they'll place tiles filling the first ring, which is the 6 spaces adjacent to Mecatol Rex, which is always at the center of the game board. Then they'll fill the second ring, and then they'll finally fill the third and most outer ring. The tiles are placed in snake order, which means once you go from the speaker all the way to the last player, then the last player will place a second tile, and they'll take turns in reverse so that the 5th, 4th, and 3rd players place a tile before the speaker goes again.
2 rules to consider when building the map raw is 2 wormholes of the same type cannot be placed adjacent to one another unless there is no other option, and the same goes for tiles that have red border edges. So these tiles could end up adjacent if, when building the map, there is no other choice, but as long as a player has the choice not to do so, it may not happen. Now that we've covered the rules of how building the map raw works, let's talk about what we love about this style of map building. Raw map building is how junkies usually play. It's how we used to play for a long time before we even discovered the Milty draft, and since then we incorporated some drafting into some of our games, but building the map raw is still the norm for us. Most episodes of TI Junkies, you actually see the map building process at the very beginning.
Which is one of the reasons why I think it's actually cool that we do it in the tournament, because it's sort of like bringing the experience of the Junkies table and the Junkies meta and the Junkies series to the world and to everyone who's playing in the tournament with us.
Absolutely. We love to promote more tools for, stirring the pot, creating drama, spice, betrayal.
And I do want to sneak in a little disclaimer here, which is that we don't think of it like raw versus Milty draft. We love Milty. We've played many games of Milty, and we also love building the map raw.
Recently, I've actually done a drafting that includes a whole banning phase at the beginning, which was really, really fun, and I actually want to try doing that more.
That's cool.
So there's just so many ways to draft, and all of them bring a unique experience to the game of TI, and in this episode, we're going to go over a specific method, which is building the map, rules as written.
So let's talk a little bit about why we like this map build. For starters, to me, I think for new players, while it can be a little bit intimidating to, remember influencers as resources and decide where to put tiles, I kind of find that new players think it's really cool that we actually build the board at the beginning of the game. Because if you've someone who just has played maybe Settlers or Monopoly or Clue, you're used to the game board being this sort of static entity and not this like modular part of the game that will change every round. There are obviously games where you change the board, but for a lot of people, it's kind of a novel experience.
For sure. It's like you feel like you've created the world you're about to live and play in. Like, oh, here's my home system, and this is what goes around it. If you're a newer player, it might not totally be something based on strategy, but as more seasoned players, there's a lot that goes into what you want to put where, why, when.
And it's also an opportunity for deals, which means it's an opportunity for salt and spice.
She was gonna stick an explodey sun between me and Mecatol, and then I talked her out of it, which was good.
I got hosed on my picks of tiles, but then through the order of placement of the map build, I ended up with some pretty good resources immediately outside home.
As a special gift to him, he lives in Planet City, filled with tech specialties.
None of them, well, I have one.
There's also a little offering by Nathan's home system.
I have one and Petey's already trying to get it. Patrick's eyeballing it.
I've got 2 tech specialties close by, so I can take that.
2 red tech skips, which are really, really nice. So that means assault cannon is kind of an option for me. And there's a yellow skip that's nearby me as well in Cares to the Slice, which I may try and get a hold of temporarily, either through diplomacy or more piratey means.
Rand, what are some of the deals you might look for in a raw map build?
The deals I would look for would kind of depend on what is in my hand. For starters, if I had too little resources or too little influence, I would potentially open up a deal to the table. Hey, does anyone have what I'm lacking? I have this legendary planet I could try to put in your slice.
Ooh.
You know, I have this Cormand, which is fun because it is a planet and gives you a boost. Whatever it might be. Ideally, these deals are made with your neighbors, though, because what we've seen a lot is, oh yeah, I have that from someone across the table, and then before you get to that person's turn to place a tile, someone else is like, I can't help but meddle with this deal. Like, it's just the opportunities there. You know, some people can't help push the button when the button's staring at them. That's fine. That happens. It's all part of the spice. Something else I look for in deal making, tech skips. So going into it, knowing what faction I'm going to play, if I need a yellow skip, if I need a green skip, I will ask for that, and I'd be willing to give up juicy resources or influence, especially if I'm looking for like a fun techie game.
That's a good point, because you do see in like a draft setting people looking for the draft with the skip that they want. But if you're doing it rules as written, the skip that you want might be in another player's hand. And maybe they're not that attached to it. Maybe they are.
It could also be a sign of good relations to go through on these kinds of deals, you know?
Well, which we saw actually in TI Junkie Season 3, Episode 8, No Trade Nomad, where Patrick was playing the Nomad and had some nice planet tiles in his hand, and so he decided to dole them out to the table, thinking, well, I'm Nomad, I'll get trade, I'll be rich anyway. If I can give out some good tiles to the other players, maybe I'll be rich in good relations and rich in trade goods.
Patrick stooging, looking for a stooge.
It didn't go as he planned, unfortunately, because actually the person who recommended he grab trade as Nomad was Nathan, and then to salt Patrick down, Nathan just took trade for himself. So Patrick actually ended up with very few trade goods and very few planet tiles.
Nathan picks trade.
It's a family business. My son, Pat H.W., will be my stooge, and he will assist me in my quest for 10 victory points.
Wait, Patrick, what happened?
Well, we talked about how it would be cool if you're the Nomad to pick 5, because nobody ever wants 5 first round. And Nathan was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So what's he do? He's speaker, he gets first choice, round 1, he takes 5. So what's he do? First round, take 5. And he's trying to like give me reasons for it, and they're all just bad. They're just bad reasons, and it's got me on tilt. I'm all tilted.
Oh, he didn't want you to have the value?
The speaker's right to your right. You can still pick money.
Why are you doing this?
Nothing wrong with silver.
Oh, they're salty and we haven't even started the round.
So then there are also faction-specific abilities or tendencies that might lend themselves to particular tiles.
Yeah, for example, Sar could try to get some asteroids strategically placed for them. Muat could try to do the same for supernovas, Empyrean with nebulas or even empties, and then of course Ghost with wormholes. I mean, where these go on the map really just determines the fate of the whole game.
Time to make the map.
Check it out. We actually have a lot more planets this time. Here's my little slice with a lot of planets. Patrick's little slice with just as many planets, if not more.
Too many planets.
Rand with a nice number of DET tokens for her to explore as the Empyrean. And Nathan
He was really mad about this nebula. We're not really sure why. But...
Oh, sure. Nobody's ever played the game before. Nobody knows how movement works with the Imperium. That's fine. It's chill. I'm good.
The game is not. No one has even picked
a strategy
I
card.
got this salt.
It's funny when you said SAR, I was thinking, oh, I would never give SAR asteroids. But then I realized, yeah, but what if they had like Aranam Mir and they were offering me Aranam Mir for some asteroids nearby? Oh, that sounds pretty good to me.
Aside from even making deals for the asteroids, having knowledge, knowing the SAR is there, they're across the table, they're next to another faction that I'm afraid of, for example, I could put the asteroids in their equidistant to stir up drama there.
That's true. I mean, I feel like even then, you mentioned the wormholes in Ghost. Like, just wormholes in general are so nice. Someone starts to hose you in the map build, and then you're like, all right, well, now you're getting a B-hole that connects you to your worst rival next to your home system.
I love wormholes adjacent to home system.
And then the other side of that coin of factions seeking out tiles they want is the rest of the table hosing factions by giving them the tiles that they don't want. So this could be just being inconvenient with asteroid fields for factions with no anti-mass. It could be a TI Junkies classic, which is putting a supernova in between whoever's playing the Winu, Rand, and Mecatol Rex.
The supernova between Winu Rand and Mecatol. It is a tragedy, tale as old as time. Hasn't always stopped me from getting there, but it's definitely not the best.
All in all, this is what ends up being what I think we would agree is the super fun thing about building the map raw, which is the more people getting spicy and saucy with it, the saucier the whole map and the whole board state ends up being from the beginning of the game.
Oh, absolutely. If someone, hoses you with a tile and you have a hosable tile, it's law. It's law, hose them back, expect it when you're hosing. I've actually played with people online who complain about raw map building being so boring because you just build it out in like a good, straightforward way where you put the good planets next to you and, you put anomalies wherever they may go and you're kind of building your own slice in a way. But that's because that's what the players are doing. I mean, that's not what has to happen. If that is the priority of, okay, it might be a safer way to play rather than ending up with a slice where you have one or two planets and a bunch of empties, but to mix things up and create different alternate TI experiences and different imbalances to have to overcome as a table, I think raw map building just really, really achieves that.
The building of the map. Blah. There is a dividing line basically down this board. On one half is all of the anomalies and all of the wormholes. I have 3 wormhole systems right next to each other, very close to home. It's wild. And on the other half of the board, it's Planet City. I think there's one anomaly, and it's a nebula that has a juicy planet in it. That's the only one.
I'm a little cautious already of Patrick, because he was trying to kind of gum me up with a bunch of empty space when I was placing planets.
I stuck some wormholes one wormhole next to Scott, which hopefully hopefully will push him in the other direction.
Just finished building the map now. I think it's gone pretty well in my favor. Got some wormholes laying around the place.
Hopefully the wormholes will not cause us to lose our planets, because I can see other people wanting to come and get some influence, resource, and planets.
I personally like that sometimes it gets spicy and sometimes it's less spicy, so you can't always count on either way happening with a raw map build. And then of course I think it's worth mentioning that it might be easier to hose your friends that you play with every weekend on the map build, as opposed to if you're in round 1 of a tournament with a bunch of strangers. Maybe it's a little more intimidating and just a little more of a violation of social etiquette to be like, here's the supernova right in front of your home system.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's one thing, is that with multi-draft, people feel a little bit more comfortable with choosing a slice where there's a supernova in front of them and it's like part of their approach to the game, as opposed to being like, here in the beginning I have arbitrarily selected this person to be the lightning rod of my spicy hand of tiles.
Absolutely. And there's also like nothing wrong with building a cozy little section for you in your own area of the map.
Totally.
There's just so many options and ways to go with this way of playing.
So let's talk about the center of gravity for every TI for game board, which is Mecatol Rex. So what you might end up seeing sometimes is what's known as the Mecatol Desert. And this is when players put their least valuable or their empty tiles in that first ring that you fill adjacent to Mecatol, saving the higher value tiles for those spaces that are closer to their home system so that they're in the early rounds, they can scoop up the most valuable tiles, leaving the less valuable ones a little further from home, a little harder to protect and harder to obtain, but less valuable to their overall game. On the contrary, sometimes there's Planet City around Mecatol. Mecatol dessert, perhaps a creme brulee, a McCobbler Rex. You guys can comment below which name is the best.
And Planet City isn't something that only happens around Mecatol. Planet City can happen anywhere, and often does in raw map build, especially if someone's flying under the radar while everyone else is hosing each other.
Which is always a great approach in TI, fly under the radar while everyone hoses each other. But then one might say that, well, if one person ends up with a lot of resources, that is an advantage. But then maybe in the social element of the game, the onus is put on the other players to kind of unify and put the table heat on that person with a lot of resources to draw on.
Which honestly is one of the things I love about TI. How there's so much imbalance that comes from all the elements like action cards and the map and the objectives.
Relics.
Yeah, all these RNG elements. But an additional RNG element is like table choices, table heat, player decisions, what happens, how people balance tempo. No one really wants to see the player with Planet City win the game. If you start the map build and you're in an okay slice and you look across the table and someone's just rolling in every 3 planet system and it's just has no empties around them, no one wants to see that person win the game. Just because someone has a lot of planets in their area, that does not mean that they have to have all those planets for the whole game.
And hopefully the table meta shifts towards that player being a little more isolated. Maybe the deals get a little more expensive. And I think we've seen in our game, sometimes alliances can stay stronger on the side of the board without Planet City because those players can be rational about the fact that, well, why should we squabble amongst ourselves over these breadcrumbs when that guy on the other side of the board has a bucket of ham and cheese croissants upon which they are feasting right now.
Lots of planets, so many planets.
Our corner has also got all the planets.
Pretty happy with how the map build's gone for me. I've got 5 planets adjacent to home, so I should hopefully be able to get my commander online first round.
I'm at Planet City, and I'm hoping to gobble up enough of these planets to score one of these points. But I know I'm gonna get the Malachi crunch put on me hard.
And the opposite can be true too. If you build the map raw and end up with nothing, like one planet, really just like a tragic area, table pity is a real thing. You get better deals. You probably attract less heat. You're seen as less of a threat and less of a contender for the win.
Or at least you can make the case that you are less of a contender for the win.
I definitively lost the map build, I think. I have maybe 4 resources in my slice and not much more influence.
We have a combination of 4 total influence in our slice today. I got absolutely terrible map draft for me.
Just look at the map. Oh my god, I have 2 anomalies next to my home system. Are you kidding me? What is it? Who am I? Am I Henry? Am I a schmuck out here? What's going on?
And before you feel sorry for these players, just know that they were all in contention for the win, and 4 Influence Mahacht was the winner of that game in Australia. So, yeah, do with that information what you may.
We do have a little bit of a running TI Junkies bit, which is that I do better and maybe even win more the worse my slice is, just because it means I can be like, no, please, I'm not the threat. I have 1 planet to my name. I'm not going to do anything, blah, blah, blah. We also even saw Matt in last year's Stooge tournament playing extra with kind of a lackluster slice, but he still managed to get into a good position and be just a few failed dice rolls away from winning. So basically what I'm saying is to anyone who signs up for my game in the tournament, just remember that if you hose me during the map build, you might actually be handing me the game. So give me all your good tiles, please. Thank you.
If you leave Henry with only 3 planets, that is basically a win mate.
So make sure I have 4 to 6.
I mean, I even remember a TI Junkies game where you came very close to the win and you had 2 influence all game. You were complaining about not being able to buy a single token.
That's true. That was in No Trade Nomad, Season 3, Episode 8 that we talked about earlier. I was playing Mentac.
Took 0 planets, but I was the only one to score any points because I did the three ships and empty systems.
I hate to go for the empty planets because they're like the empty systems because that just, you want to get planets first round.
Everyone's salty, everyone's going nuts, and I have 0 planets, but I got 1 point to my name.
Henry is light years away from Mecatol. He has no planets. He's just on the edge of the board.
The last round I got War Sun Tech. I don't know. I mean, I only have 2 planets outside of home right now, so it's kind of like a ridiculous expense.
Worried about Henry running away with it because he's got no planets, nobody's looking at him.
I unfortunately was not able to score a public in addition to my secrets because of my situation where I only have 2 influence between all 3 of my planets. So I couldn't get enough tokens in order to have enough actions to get everywhere I needed to go. I had to do some ridiculously bad deals. I had to sell Promise of Protection for $1 so I would have enough trade goods to score last round, but I managed to double score, which is good. 3 Planet Henry. That's what they call me, 3 Planet Henry. I'm gonna go eat this sandwich.
Henry's won this game.
That's true. Henry, you have this in the bag.
Nathan threw this game.
No planet, Henry.
I'll take it if you guys want to give it to me.
Nathan
Wrap it
sat
up,
there
wrap
and
it up,
threw
and
his
blow
hand.
on it.
I never thought there would be a day that having 2 influence and being unable to buy a toke actually put me in contention for the win. So, look, TI is full of surprises.
I mean, yeah, because again, it's not all about planets. You started that game being the only person to score a point in round 1 because the objective was to have ships in 3 empty systems.
Yeah, shoutouts to having no planets because it put me in the lead, at least in round 1 that game.
It just brings me to a point I feel strongly about, which is emphasizing that the planets in your area don't make or break the game. There's just so much that happens in TI. I mean, I've been involved in lots of drafts online and such, regular games, Franken, bag drafts, whatever, and I often see players really valuing slice, really valuing picking blue tiles over anything else. And I mean, I agree, planets are awesome, they rock, but I feel like they give you a better chance at getting lucky in the random number generator that is TI, but it's still pretty random what ends up happening. I mean, even the table pity of that day is random. Who are you playing with? Are you playing with more sympathetic players who might leave you to your own devices or even like toss you a trade good for your pathetic situation? Or are you playing with cutthroat players who will take advantage of your weak positioning and just gobble you up?
You know, so much in TI I feel like is psychologically baked into the game. Like people having a good slice and all of a sudden they have this like higher expectation of their game, higher expectation of their progress they're supposed to be making round to round, and then that somehow gets in their own head of like, oh, I should be doing better than this because I have this good faction and this good slice. There's this whole like weird Freudian formula, I think, that slices can kind of go into an effect. This actually reminds me of something Brassbird and I talked about, a different sort of table balancing element to the game, which is sometimes you might hear out in TI land talk about how the economic factions tend to overall be stronger at putting a game together than the combat-oriented factions. But Brassford and I sort of talked about, oh, well, right, in a boat float meta that discourages player-to-player conflict, maybe that is inevitable that the factions inherently not as good at fighting will do better. But maybe there's a world in which the table heat distributes such that we ought to body check the rich factions, even if it flies in the face of a boat float meta. Maybe the table can come together to sort of tamp down with more aggressive factions and maybe even reward those aggressive factions.
And so I imagine the same thing applies to the map. If you have a player that is just oversaturated in resources, things can be done about that. And that actually brings me to a point about factions that have better movement or even start with 2 movement. Those are the best factions to police your neighbors. I mean, round 1, grabbing the planets that are equidistant, that is a huge shift in the snowball effect that is the economy of TI.
That's true.
I am the Mentac, but with no wormholes on my side of the map. Trade is on the other side of the map. I want my trade goods. I want to steal. So I think I'm gonna go for Cruiser 2 right out the gate.
I can double teching, just go ahead and grab Cruiser 2, so I'm extra mobile because I have 1 planet adjacent to my home system.
Michael got a little hosed on that map build. I think he's got a Nova and a Gravity Rift. containing his slice with a planet stretched to Mecatol, which he can do as Titans, so I guess I don't feel too bad for him. He's Titans. He's got a good chance no matter what.
Nobody's coming to my side of the board. I've got this giant chasm between me and the Titans, so hopefully I can keep them off my back.
Nathan and I already have beef. I'm trying to keep things very cool. I just want to share one equidistant.
Factions like Argent or Titans that from the get-go they could just pop by right next to your home system and be like, this is mine now. Perfect example is our mini-sode on TI Junkies, where Nathan, as Argent, takes Primor from right next to my home system, saying he'll give it back to me as he's exploring the planet and draws DMZ.
That's just so classic hosiery right there.
Nathan just took a planet next to Rand's home system, but it's cool because it's demilitarized.
How am I supposed to get that?
No big deal there.
There's been a lot of drama this game where Nathan seized Primor, which was next to Rand's home system in round 1. Rand just drew this secret. Add insult to injury. That's brutal.
I can still trade it to you. I'll trade it to you for your support.
Yeah, you can have it back right away. Oh, never mind, it's DMZ.
It's so tragic, but that was totally within, his rule-given right of TI, right? He can move to, why not take that planet from me? I'm not condoning this, Nathan. If you're listening out there, that was a very, very wrong move in that situation, but, objectively, in other situations, that might be an okay thing to do.
So something else about this building the map raw is that it sort of bends the concept of predetermined slices, who is privy to what equidistant. And I think in the TI community at large, there's probably not total agreement about, if you draft an equidistant, that means it's yours or not. But people do tend to be sort of protective over the planets in their slice, even if it is the equidistant,
That is absolutely a result of drafting as a method for building the map. You see that, the left equidistant is what I picked when I chose these planets over a faction or speaker order. And that gives you this sense of entitlement, like it's mine, I picked it. So often people stick by this, especially in boat float metas of, we can all just share, everyone gets one equidistant, and then that's that. Everyone's happy, they get what they drafted. But in reality, they are literally called equidistants, they are equal distant between the players, equal opportunity. And there's one on the left and one on the right. And you see it in games, but I feel like you could see it even more where players have neither equidistance or both equidistance, depending on how the neighbor situation is going.
Leave us a comment below telling us, do you think you are entitled to an equidistant that you draft in your slice? Or is it up for grabs? And maybe your neighbor takes it, maybe you take it. Let us know.
It's definitely up for grabs, guys. That's just the answer. You might as well write that in your
She's biased.
I just think there's a lot of spice in not knowing whether your neighbor is going right or left, and that not being an assumption, and that being something you either have to figure out diplomatically or find out as you're expanding your territories. I really want to promote this fluid idea of the map, even with like I said, the movement factions or the ghosts factions, that is just totally breaks the idea of here's a section that is mine. That's no, every single wormhole is adjacent, so that could be anywhere, right? So why not take that logic and just apply it to every faction situation?
And I appreciate that perspective because it goes along sort of with an idea you have and have talked about, which is every single game is a new meta. We cannot bring the value of things from game to game, or at least we shouldn't necessarily take for granted the value of things game to game. And I feel like this feels like an extension of that philosophy you hold, which is you can't just take your slice for granted. You can't take X number of tiles in your part of the board for granted just because in this past 6 games, those have been your tiles at the beginning.
Absolutely. And I will admittedly say I have taken advantage of people's assumption of how the map borders should run. I would be in a game where I'm I can never have a strong enough fleet to hold this left equidistant, and then the person on my left being oh, that's yours and this is mine, right? And I'm yes, absolutely. That's a great idea. Thank you for pitching these reasonable borders that I am totally in agreement with.
that I could have never maintained on my own by will of force.
But thank you for agreeing to giving me that. I mean, really, the concept of a slice is it's non-binding. It's like, what do you
true.
mean? Like, this is just, they're all tiles on the map that we're all playing. So yeah, I guess part of the bottom line is building the map raw just allows for more opportunities for players to interact with each other's games and affect how the next few hours are going to play out. Rivalries could start before the first move is even made, totally just like altering the fate of the game. You could eat a reactor meltdown round 1 because you thought it'd be funny to put a bunch of asteroids right next to your neighbor's home system.
So good luck to you after spending the toke on that space stock. Which I think then is right, is this is actually something that then people would say is why they don't want to build the map raw, is because they want to limit those things in the beginning of the game. They want to just have a nice, stable, calm water early round. And to that I say, where's your seasoning? Where's the salt? Where's the spice?
I mean, it also doesn't always backfire in this way. Sometimes it works out really well. Sometimes you put a Nova and an empty to someone's left because you want them to eat their neighbor on the right because that happens to be your neighbor on the left. So that sounds like a great situation for you, and sometimes it works out. Sometimes they don't remember it. Sometimes they don't think it's worth playing the reactor meltdown for, and sometimes you achieve what you're going for when you alter the state of the map.
And sometimes they get DET and all of a sudden they have a relic or a secret objective, and guess what? Didn't really hose them that hard. They might not admit that until a few weeks after the game is over, but
that exploration probe might be the card that wins them the game.
It's so true. It's so true. Something we've also done at the TI Junkies table that I do recommend is a randomized seeding variant of building the map raw. So this is when we still take turns placing tiles, building the map as you usually would, but the difference is we don't know where we're going to sit. So we don't know where our home system will be on the board until after the map has been made, and then we roll dice to randomly assign everyone's home system location.
And this variant was created when, the hosings went way too far and people were like, hey, this is just insane. Let's try something different. And we actually saw a lot of fun outcomes from this, which includes spicy hoses that happen because they can't be personally traced back to you. It wasn't a personal aha, here you go, Jolnar. It was oh, I didn't know you were sitting there. Oops. It kind of absolves you of that hosing responsibility in a sense. But also it's created a situation, for example, where the equidistants and the planets around Mecatol are just unhinged. There's just so many juicy things there. And then the tiles around one's home system are empties and more lackluster because everyone's I have a better chance of getting this if it's reachable from 2 table seats than just placing it in a random spot.
Yeah, you would think that the logic of the random map build means that everyone will try to balance out each part of the game board in case they sit there. But then what actually has kind of ended up happening a couple of times is people do the math and they go, well, I only have about a 1 in 6 chance of getting this really bad slice, so maybe I can just keep piling the low quality tiles in this area, and the odds are I won't end up sitting there. Of course, someone does end up sitting there. Fingers crossed it's me, because then I might win. So there you have it. There are our thoughts on building the map rules as written. We love it, we recommend it, and most of all, we look forward to seeing what deals, salt, etc. all of you come up with in your Stooge for the Throne 2 tournament games coming up in the weekends ahead. Shout out to Drago. Good luck in your game this weekend.
Thank you to our Patreon members for voting on this topic for today's episode. There's now a new poll up for the month of May, so head on over to vote and let us know which topic you want to hear us discuss in a future episode. The nominees this time around are Necrovirus with Rand, Tips for First-Time TI Players, or Spiciest Action Cards.
Oh, I like all those topics. I'm excited to see which one wins this time.
Enjoy your weeks, everyone, and see you at the first Stooge for the Throne stream.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Twilight Imperium Junkies podcast.
If you like what we do and want to support the show, check out our Patreon, where amongst other things, you can vote on topics for future episodes.
Keep up with the TI Junkies series by subscribing on YouTube.
Until next time, keep stooging, or maybe don't.
Unless you're my stooge.